old hunting cabin reeked of mildew and forgotten things. A compass with a cracked face sat on the kitchen table, its needle spinning wildly despite no wind. By midnight, the group's youngest, a quiet photographer named Ellie, vanished without a trace. The others found her backpack by the fireplace, still warm from her body heat. "She'd never leave her camera," muttered Jason, the tech-obsessed college dropout, his fingers twitching as he scrolled through a dead phone. The cabin's windows warped the woods into jagged, liquid shapes. They split up to search. Marcus, the ex-military leader, took the forest trail, while Lena, the sarcastic ex-journalist, and Ravi, the agoraphobic musician, stayed behind to secure the cabin. The compass's needle stilled at 3:47 a.m., pointing to the woods. Marcus found Ellie's camera tangled in roots, the lens cracked but still clicking. A flash went off in the dark. He ran back, but the trail had shifted, birch trees now leaning at impossible angles. Lena heard his panicked yells, then silence. Ravi claimed to hear whispers in the walls when he was alone. He'd scribbled symbols on the bathroom mirror in condensation. "It's a map," he insisted, voice shaky. "To the place where they go." Lena smashed the mirror with a frying pan, but the symbols reappeared the next morning. The compass began to hum. Ravi's sketches turned violent. Faces with too many eyes, trees with bloodied roots. He vanished first, leaving a note. "Don't open the door. They're inside the compass now." They found the door in the basement, a rotting slab buried under dust. It creaked open to a void that smelled of ozone and rot. Marcus insisted it was a natural gas leak. Lena argued it was a portal. The compass needle spun again, now aimed at the door. They sealed it with duct tape and prayer candles, but the void seeped into their dreams. Marcus woke up with a bark-like scar on his wrist. Lena found her journal filled with Ellie's handwriting. "It's not a compass, it's a key." At dawn, the door exploded outward. Marcus was gone. The compass lay cold, its needle locked on Lena. She heard Ravi's voice in her head. "They need a host." She hurled the compass into the woods, but its hum followed her. The forest swallowed the cabin whole by nightfall. Only Lena remained, sitting on a rock miles from the trail, the compass spinning in her palm. The needle now pointed to her chest. Somewhere, a camera clicked. The camera's screen flickered static, then a face. Marcus's, hollow-eyed, whispering, "You're next." Lena dropped it, but the clicks continued. A dozen now, arranged like a coven around her. The compass hummed louder, its symbols bleeding into the air. She ran, but the trees blurred into Ravi's sketches, eyes in bark, roots with teeth. A figure materialized at the trailhead, a woman in a frayed parka, clutching a compass identical to hers. "You inherited it from me," the woman said, her voice layered with others. "We all inherited it. It doesn't open doors. It opens people." She pressed her palm to a tree. The bark split, revealing a mouth that swallowed her whole. Lena's compass began to vibrate violently, etching new glyphs onto her wrist. The camera's lens dilated like a pupil, and she saw herself on screen, screaming in a language she'd never learned. Behind her, the forest shuddered. The door had reopened, not in the cabin, but inside her. She stumbled into a clearing where the compass's hum resonated with her heartbeat. The needle now pointed at the ground, where a child's toy lay buried. Digging, she unearthed a tiny key and a Polaroid of the cabin, dated yesterday. Her name was scrawled across it in her own handwriting. The wind carried Marcus's laugh, and the key dissolved into ash. The figure reappeared, her parka now blood-stained, identical to a photo Lena had found in the cabin's attic. A woman who'd vanished in 1998. "You're the last," the woman said. The hiker's boots crunched over pine needles as the fog thickened, each step echoing in the hollow silence. She'd been tracking the same spiral-carved symbols for miles, ancient, deliberate, wrong, when the wind died. Her radio crackled, then static. A child's laughter echoed from the trees. By dawn, her car was found idling in the parking lot, her backpack slumped in the back seat like an abandoned dummy. Maya adjusted her scarf against the bite of the northern Vermont air, her rental car idling near the faded "Welcome to Blackroot" sign. The town had swallowed 3 hikers in the last decade, all last seen wandering the same forest. The sheriff's office had a single file on her sister, Lila, missing for 6 months, last seen hiking alone. The file photo showed Lila grinning, her hand brushing a carving identical to the one Maya had found, etched into her dresser drawer 2 weeks ago. Eli, the town's only guide willing to talk, met her at the gas station, his face a map of scars and suspicion. "You shouldn't be here," he muttered, tossing a machete into her trunk. "The hollow god doesn't like visitors." His eyes flicked to her wedding ring. Maya noticed the gap between his front teeth, a detail that would haunt her later. They trekked into the woods at dusk, Eli leading with a practiced indifference that masked his unease. The symbols grew denser, swirling patterns that seemed to pulse in the dim light. Maya's phone buzzed with a photo from Lila's last hike, a close-up of the carvings, the same spiral pattern, but with a jagged line through it. "She knew something," Maya said, her voice tight. Eli's grip on the machete tightened. At the river, they found the first body. A man in a 1980s flannel shirt, his face frozen in a scream, surrounded by the symbols. The water had washed away his name tag. Eli swore under his breath, his hand trembling as he pointed to the riverbank. He wasn't here yesterday. They camped under a canopy of skeletal trees, the moon a silver sickle above them. Maya dreamt of Lila's voice, distorted and distant, warning her to leave. When she woke, Eli was gone. The fire had gone out, but the machete lay across her sleeping bag, the blade slick with something darker than rain. By morning, the forest had shifted. Paths twisted back on themselves, the symbols glinted faintly in the sunlight. Maya's compass spun uselessly. She stumbled into a clearing where the trees formed a perfect circle, their trunks carved with the same spiral pattern and a new symbol, a hand reaching inward. The air felt heavy, oppressive, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. She found the chamber beneath a collapsed tree root, its entrance hidden by ivy. Inside, the walls were covered in carvings of people, faces contorted in pain, arms raised in supplication. At the center stood a stone altar, stained with what looked like old blood. A journal lay open on the floor, its pages filled with frantic handwriting. "They're not sacrifices, they're anchors. The hollow god is here. Always here." The journal's final entry was smudged, but the date matched Lila's disappearance. A sudden noise, branches snapping, made Maya freeze. She backed away, her hand brushing the altar. The carvings shivered. Somewhere in the forest, a voice laughed, young and familiar. The voice grew clearer, higher pitched, until it was Lila. Her exact cadence, her laugh, even the way she hummed, "Row, row, row your boat," when nervous. Maya's fingers trembled as she traced the altar stain. A photo slid from the journal's spine. Lila, age 7, hugging a man with the same hollow eyes as the carvings. "Dad." The journal's smudged entry read, "He's not my brother. He's the first anchor. I'm the second. You're the third." A shadow coiled around Maya's ankle. She yanked her foot back. Too late. The ivy outside the chamber moved, tendrils slithering toward the entrance. The carvings on the walls began to bleed. The journal's brittle pages smelled of damp coal and burnt sugar. Eleanor traced the cursive line. When the cradle creaks backward, the god stirs, and hummed the melody in reverse. The air in her cluttered study thickened, static crackling in her ears. Her cat, Miso, leapt onto the desk, fur bristling like a porcupine's, and began clawing at the wallboard with a sound like wet nails on plaster. Dr. Marcus Venn arrived at dusk, his tie knotted crookedly beneath a suit, stained with coffee rings. He'd flown cross-country after Eleanor's frantic email, only to find her crouched in the hallway, whispering about a faceless thing in the wall. "This journal," he said, flipping to a sketch of a woman cradling a broken clock, "is the same one my grandmother burned. She claimed it taught her to lull children to sleep forever." The asylum's iron gate groaned when they pushed it open, its hinges weeping rust. Flickering security lights revealed a mural on the main building. Peeling paint revealed layers of faces beneath, all staring inward, their mouths sewn shut with black thread. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and decay. Marcus's flashlight caught a skeleton in the janitor's closet, its ribcage cradling a conductor's baton, and a sound system wired to play a cracked lullaby, looping in reverse. That night, Marcus woke to his grandmother's voice in his skull, singing the melody. He couldn't tell if he was dreaming or if the walls were breathing. The hum grew louder as they ventured deeper into the sealed wing, the walls vibrating with a rhythm that matched Marcus's pulse. Eleanor's phone flickered to life in the darkness, casting a blue glow on a row of manila folders labeled Project Somnus. Inside were Polaroids of children, each one's eyes missing, replaced by tiny clocks, ticking in sync with the lullaby. Marcus's breath fogged in the cold as he realized the photos were dated years after his grandmother's death. They found the conductor's podium in a chamber buried beneath the asylum, the floor littered with glass shards that refracted the lullaby's reversed notes into a kaleidoscope of red light. A child's handprint, smudged with ash, was pressed into the podium's surface. Eleanor's fingers brushed it, then recoiled as the handprint pulsed, leaving a burn on her skin shaped like a faceless man. "The clock," she whispered, recognizing the symbol from the journal's margins. "It's not a metaphor, it's a name." The sound system sputtered, then played the lullaby forwards. Marcus's grandmother's voice, clear and sweet, filled the room. "Sleep now," it crooned, "and remember what you've forgotten." The mural's faces began to peel themselves from the walls, their thread-stitched mouths unraveling. Eleanor grabbed Marcus's wrist as the ceiling groaned, the skeletal conductor's baton now clutched in her own hand. Outside, the asylum's gate creaked shut again. A car's headlights cut through the fog, but the license plate read 1947, the year the asylum closed. Marcus's reflection in a cracked mirror showed not his face, but the faceless figure from the journal, its hands weaving his hair into a clockwork braid. The lullaby's final note hung in the air, and when it faded, the walls began to sing in unison. "The sleeper is awake! The sleeper is awake!" Eleanor's voice cut through the chant. "It's not a god," she said, her eyes hollow. "It's a mirror." She pointed to the mural's center, where the faceless figure now held a mirror reflecting the room, except Marcus's grandmother stood behind them, alive, humming the lullaby. Her hand reached through the glass, and the sound system exploded in a shower of sparks as the walls collapsed inward, sealing them with the conductor's last, echoing laugh. The mirror's glass thickened, its surface rippling like liquid mercury. Marcus's grandmother winked, her fingers brushing the glass, then dissolving into smoke that coiled into Eleanor's ears. The mirror mirror's crack splits her reflection like a fault line, bisecting a face she doesn't own. Wide eyes, too pale, lips parted in a silent alarm. The newspaper's yellowed headline smears ink around "Flood," the word clawed through with a jagged X. Outside, a church bell tolls backward, each chime a heartbeat in reverse. Lena's boots crunch gravel as she follows the town's dissonance. A gas station with flickering clocks, all set to 3:33. A diner where waiters serve plates of empty chairs. The child appears first in the alley, no older than 9, holding a map scrawled in charcoal. 100 years before the storm, she says, pressing the paper into Lena's palm. The symbols are the same on every street corner, clocks weeping into spirals. The library is a mausoleum of forgotten names. She pries open a drawer labeled 1998, 2003, 2009, all containing photographs of herself at different ages. The dates on each missing person report match her birth date. A librarian's voice cracks as she mutters, "You were here first. Always first." At dusk, the homeless man hands her a wallet. Inside, a photo of a highway submerged in black water. Her reflection is blurred, but her rental car's license plate, JXK 721, is sharp as a shard. The man's breath smells of burnt sugar. "They're counting down," he says, nodding toward the clock tower's shadow. The bell above her head starts to chime. Inside the clock tower, Lena finds no gears, just a spiral staircase descending into black water. Her flashlight reveals initials carved into the wall. JXK 721, the same license plate. The water pulses like a throat. A voice whispers, "You built this." The reflection in the tower's mirror stirs before her. Not a doppelganger. Older, eyes hollow, holding a rusted key. The reflection points to the ceiling, where a stained glass skylight fractures, casting prismatic cracks on the water. Lena dives, surface breaking to find the homeless man's photo submerged in her pocket. The highway's now a bridge, collapsing into the sky as if pulled by a reverse tide. Back at the library, the librarian's face dissolves into a mosaic of Lena's own features, each shard a different age, each muttering, "You forgot the flood was your fault." The child's map flutters to the floor, symbols now rearranged into a date. Today. Rain begins to fall upward through the clock tower's shattered windows. Lena's reflection emerges from the water, key in hand, and says, "The storm can't start without you." The tower's walls bleed numbers, her birth date, counting down to 0. The key fits the water. As Lena turns it, the tower's floor dissolves, swallowing her into a memory. A 10-year-old girl standing on a dam, her parents screaming, a flashlight beam cutting through the dark. "You let the gate open?" the reflection hisses. The water swells, a wall of black rising to drown the town. Lena's lungs burn. She wakes in the motel, the mirror whole, the newspaper headline now reading, "Missing since the flood." The child's map lies crumpled on the floor, symbols blank. The clock tower's clock strikes 12. Outside, the sky ripples like liquid. Lena runs, but the streets fold into the flooded highway. Cars float upside down. Her reflection in the water screams, "Remember, the dam was never real." The sheriff appears, his face Lena's own. "You did this every time," he says, reaching for her. She steps into the river, the current pulling her toward the dam's skeletal remains. In the final instant, she sees it all. The loop, the memories stolen, the town's existence a prison for her guilt. The water swallows her, and the clock tower collapses, its soundless crash echoing through time. Somewhere, a child draws a map of a town that never was. The last journal entry was smudged with salt water and something that looked like melted wax. Clara's flashlight flickered as she ascended the lighthouse spiral, the whispers growing louder, until a voice, deep and wet, hissed, "You're too late." Below, the sea roared like it knew the secret. Clara had come to Blackwell to uncover the fate of the 3 lighthouse keepers who'd vanished in the past decade. The town's mayor, a gaunt man with a twitch in his left eye, handed her a file labeled, "Do not open after dark." She'd opened it at 11:57 p.m. anyway, finding only a child's drawing of a tower with a red X through it. The lighthouse, she learned, hadn't been staffed since 1983, until Elias Vorn, a retired astronomer, took the post 6 years ago. Elias answered his door in a bathrobe, clutching a mug of tea that steamed too violently for hot water. "You shouldn't be here," he said, though his voice wavered. His walls were plastered with star charts and tide calendars, but the dates were mismatched, some labeled 1947, others 2047. A single-framed photo showed Elias with a girl, maybe 10, her eyes hollow as moon craters. By noon, Clara found the first body. Not a skeleton, but a man preserved in the dunes, his skin etched with spirals matching the lighthouse's windows. The sheriff, a woman with a scarred lip and a gun holstered too tightly, said, "That's not a body. That's a warning." She refused to say who carved the spirals. That night, Clara dreamt of the girl from the photo. She stood in the lighthouse beam, which wasn't light at all, but a column of writhing shadows. "He's hungry," the girl whispered. Clara woke to the sound of cracking glass. Her motel window was frosted with patterns identical to the spirals. Elias met her at dawn, his breath fogging even in the heat. "Leave today," he begged, but his pupils were vertical slits. She followed him to the lighthouse, where the door hung ajar. Inside, the walls pulsed like a heartbeat, and the floor sloped downward into a cavern she'd seen only in the journal's sketches. At its center stood an iron door, etched with the same spirals, and a name, Alaric Vorn, 1893. The journal had belonged to Alaric. Clara had read his frantic accounts of digging into the dunes, unearthing a fossilized thing with too many joints. He'd built the lighthouse to trap it, using his daughter's voice as a lock. The beam isn't a light, she realized. It's a leash. Elias had inherited the curse, explaining why he'd taken the job, why he'd drawn the girl in the photo, why his own daughter's eyes had gone hollow. When the door shuttered, Clara ran. The sheriff cornered her at the dock, gun raised. "It's already inside you," the woman said, and her eyes turned black. Clara dove into the water, but the tide pulled her back toward the lighthouse. Elias stood on the shore, singing a lullaby from the journal. The beam swept over her, and she understood. The lighthouse didn't contain the thing. It fed it. Every keeper had been a meal. The last thing Clara saw was the girl in the photo, now reflected in every window, smiling as the tower swallowed the horizon.